All right, and then the AV node, if it's not receiving a signal from the SA node, if the SA node somehow gets damaged, then the AV node can initiate impulses. And it will initiate impulses at a rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute. And then if the ventricles are not getting a signal from the AV node, then they say, okay, well then we're going to initiate our own impulses. And if the ventricles initiate it, it'll do it at a rate of 20 to 40 beats per minute. So this is going to come in handy when we're looking at EKG rhythms and you wonder why the rate is so slow. It could be because there was damage to the SA node and the AV node, and then the ventricles are the only thing that are still initiating impulses. Rhythmicity just means they depolarize in a repetitive manner. Okay, so for an EKG, when measuring it, and then with ECG, EKG, it's electrocardiogram, and in English we spell cardiogram with a C. This started in Germany, and cardiogram in German begins with a K. So that's how ECGs started out as EKGs. And EKGs have pretty much stuck. At the hospital, you'll hear either one. Sometimes you hear them, I would say most of the time you hear it referred to as EKG, but sometimes you'll also hear it referred to as ECG, which is probably more appropriate, but we're creatures of habit, I think. So the action potentials conducted through myocardial fibers during depolarization produce electrical currents that eventually make their way to the body's surface. So when those cells are going from a negative charge on the inside to a positive charge on the inside, that's what we're detecting when we stick EKG electrodes on the chest. Electrodes placed on the skin and attached to a specialized voltmeter can detect small voltage changes as the heart depolarizes and repolarizes. This voltmeter is called it's the machine they use. Yeah, electrocardiograph. And the paper tracing that you get is called an electrocardiogram. So an ECG is a recording of voltage against time. There's leads and electrodes used to record the ECG that may be placed directly on the chest surface, or you can even attach it to arms and legs, and it will still sense the changes in the voltage. If you put a lead on the chest, it's called a chest lead. But if you put the leads on the arms or legs, it's called a limb lead. Do you want to write that down? So chest lead is on the thorax. Limb lead is arms or legs. When you put the electrodes on the body, they have to have good contact with the skin. So somebody that's really hairy, you won't get a good EKG tracing. And what you need to do is shave off a spot of hair so that you can put the electrode directly on the skin. Or if the skin is wet or if it's oily, then you have to use an alcohol pad and clean the skin before you put the electrode on. So I just have, electrodes must have good skin contact. You may have to shave hair. If the skin is wet or oily, use an alcohol pad. Does that make sense, or do you want to write that down? That makes sense. All right, you'll start off when you put electrodes on the patient and you hook the wires up to the electrodes. You start off with them in a certain order. And the order that you start off with is you put one on the right arm, one on the left arm, and one on the left leg. if you're doing limb leads. If you're putting them on the chest or chest leads, again, right arm, and then the left leg would go over the ribs anteriorly. When you put the electrodes on the chest, you get a better picture because movement of the arms and legs creates artifact in your tracing. Like instead of us seeing a smooth line, you'll see squiggliness. And the squiggliness happens when you're moving around. So putting the leads on the arms and legs and the patient's moving around, you won't get a good tracing. So it's better to have it on the chest. All right, there's 3 main electrodes needed to monitor an ECG. The first one, write down negative. There's a lot of notes on this slide, so you're going to write tiny. So you wrote negative, and then next to it, write place on right arm or right mid clavicle. So place on right arm or right mid clavicle. On the next line, put positive. Place on left leg or lower left ribs anteriorly. Place on left leg or lower left ribs anteriorly. And the third line, write down ground, the ground wire. Place on left arm or preferably under the left mid clavicle. So left arm or left mid clavicle. Okay, some more to write down. Negative, the electrodes are color-coded, or the electrode wires are color-coded. So for negative, it's white. Positive is red. And the ground wire is black. So the way that I remember that is white on right, red on ribs, and black left over or black left shoulder. You want to write it down, or if you can think of something else?
I like that.
White on right, red on ribs, black left over or black left shoulder. All right, and then you hear about Einstein's Triangle more in textbook. Never heard anything mentioned about Einstein's Triangle at the bedside. But what it is when you're placing the charges differently on the bottom, and you're picking up the signal from the heart in different ways, it changes the way the tracing looks. Sometimes you can see the left ventricle better one way or the other, so that would be a reason. What I want you to write down on your paper there is for the different placements, electrodes are not moved. For the different placements, electrodes are not moved, but the setting on the EKG machine, settings on the EKG machine or monitor will change the polarity.
So essentially that can cause contraction?
No, we're just monitoring something. We're sensing part depolarization and repolarization.
Right.
And we're starting off saying that the one on the right is positive,
Right.
but we can tell the machine, make that on the negative one, and make this one positive instead of the ground.
Oh, okay. So you could change them.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Esther, can you repeat that sentence again? I'm sorry, for the different electrodes?
Yes. So I have the electrodes are not moved, but the setting on the EKG machine will change the polarity. Is that the sentence you need? Okay. So what part do you have so far?
The different electrodes. Just repeat the whole thing.
Okay.
'Cause I haven't
Electrodes are not moved,
seen it.
but the setting on the EKG machine will change the polarity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So for lead 1, it'll tell the electrode on the left arm to be positive. And it'll tell the electrode on the right arm to be negative. And then that's called lead 1. So when you're looking at an EKG monitor, you can select different leads to look at the heart muscle. So if you select lead 1, then the machine will tell, okay, that electrode that's on the left arm or left middle clavicle, make that one positive. And make the one on the right arm, instead of that ground, make that one negative. And now let's see what the heart looks like, looking at it from that angle. All right, the one that I gave you that we start off with the white on the right, that one was negative. The red on the ribs started off as positive. Oops. That is called lead 2. When on the right arm you've got negative, and on the ribs or the left leg you have positive. That's considered lead 2. This is usually lead 2 that's used for continuous monitoring. And then for lead 3, we tell the machine, okay, make the left arm or the left clavicle electrode negative and make the left leg or the ribs positive. And that's called lead 3. All right, so this is important to know. It says the heart depolarizes in a base to apex direction, meaning from the atria to the ventricles. So that wave of depolarization of the cells going from negative on the inside to positive on the inside, it starts off at the base of the heart in the atria, and then it'll spread through the ventricles. The electrical current generated by depolarization flows in the same direction. So, current flowing toward a lead's positive electrode will generate an upward deflection on the EKG tracing. So when we see the ventricles depolarizing, we'll see the tracing going upward. As the negative to positive is moving towards that electrode, it'll make it go up. But if current is flowing away from a positive electrode, we're going to see it go down. So when we're looking at an EKG electrode, you know the big QRS, that big thing on an EKG, that's the ventricles depolarizing. Sometimes you see it pointing up, sometimes you see it pointing down. And the only reason you're seeing it differently is because of the charge of the electrode. So it could be in lead 3 instead of in lead 2. MCL1 is a popular lead in the ICU, and it uses a 4th electrode, and it tells you the 4th electrode is placed below the left clavicle. So when you're in the ICU and you're assessing your patient and you're seeing 4 on the chest, it's because they're using that 4th one to monitor in MCL1. And why? Why can't they just use lead 2 like everybody else? Well, it tells you on this last bullet. It says this lead is effective for monitoring QRS complex dysrhythmias. So something going on in the ventricles, MCL1 will notice it best. It's best for noticing P wave changes or something going on in the atria, or if there's a defect in the bundle branch. And it sees PVCs well too. So that's why they like to use that lead. This is showing you a picture of MCL1. Is it labeled there anywhere?
No.
All right, so you have to label this on your paper. MCL1. And everything is moved around. Because we started off in lead 2, we put the negative on the right and the positive on the left. They've got everything completely switched. Negative is over here, positive is over here, and then they've got 2 ground wires. All right, an EKG is graphed as voltage over time, and I'll go through the different waves and then we'll stop and do the rest after lunch. All right, so looking at an EKG tracing, we see the P wave, and that's this little blip. And the P wave shows up when the atria depolarize. Then the signal is sent to the AV node and then through the bundle of His. And then when the ventricles depolarize, we get a big, huge spike. And that's called the QRS complex. What we don't see in here is when the atria are repolarizing. What we do see when the ventricles repolarize, and that's called the T wave. So the P wave is when the atria depolarize. Typically takes, 2 little boxes, 0.06 to 0.1 seconds. The QRS wave is also called the R wave, and this is when the ventricles repolarize. We will be counting the little boxes. We'll start after lunch though. But whenever you start counting how many little boxes the QRS takes or the R wave takes, you start when it leaves the baseline until it returns to the baseline, and all of that is considered the QRS. So it should be 2 to 3 little boxes. And then the T wave when the ventricles repolarize. Oh, and then we've got the PR interval to look at. This is the time required for the sinus node's impulse to travel to the ventricles. When you measure the PR interval, you begin with the beginning of the P wave to the first ventricular deflection, and that's going to be the PR interval. And it can take 3 to 5 little boxes. Longer than that is abnormal. Here it shows you the PR interval. You begin with the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS. That's your PR interval. The ST segment is what's between the QRS and the T wave, and that's called the ST segment. And it should be on flat and at the baseline. I don't think I ever see it flat on the baseline, but that's what it's saying is normal. So we'll take a look at yours. You guys are going to get a tracing of your EKG, and then I'll have you tell me all these things after you get the tracing. Okay, so the rest we'll do after lunch. You guys going to go out and get something, or you brought something with you?
Come on my house real quick.
Your house?
Yeah, they're right on.
Yeah.
I shall.